Yes, everything you saw in that title and thumbnail is real. JD Vance did try to clap back. The word cooked was everywhere. People were saying, try harder. And what happened next is something nobody expected, not even him. And the truth is about to hit harder than you're ready for. Because here's the part they didn't tell you. When JD Vance decided to step into that arena, he didn't realize the room had already changed. The audience wasn't listening for noise. They were waiting for something real. And he walked in thinking he was the sharpest voice in the room, thinking a few clever words were going to shake the walls. But confidence without awareness is just noise. And that's where the problem started. See, JD Vance likes to present himself as the guy who says what others are afraid to say. He positions himself like a truth teller in an uncomfortable world. He talks about working class struggles, about traditional values, about broken systems. And on the surface, that sounds relatable, familiar, safe. But there's a huge difference between talking about pain and truly understanding it, a dangerous difference. And the moment he tried to speak over lived experience instead of listening to it, that's when the tension started building. The energy shifted without him even noticing. People leaned in, not because they agreed, but because they sensed something was coming, a pushback, a correction, a reckoning. And what most people didn't catch at first is that this wasn't just about politics. It wasn't just red versus blue. This was about who gets to define reality, who gets to tell the story, who gets to frame the struggle. And when you speak on people without standing with people, eventually the people will speak back. Right when he thought he had the room, right when that little smirk of confidence crept in, right when he expected the moment to land as a win, that's when the tone changed. Quiet at first, almost respectful, almost calm. And that made it even more powerful, because power doesn't always need volume. Sometimes it just needs clarity. And clarity walked in like a storm. See, the counter didn't come in hot. It came in sharp. It came in grounded. It came in facts wrapped in lived reality. Every word carefully aimed, not to humiliate, not to insult, but to expose the cracks in the argument itself. That's what made it deadly. No theatrics, just truth, delivered with a fire that couldn't be ignored. You want to talk about family values? Let's talk about which families get left behind. You want to talk about hard work? Let's talk about who works the hardest and still can't afford to live. You want to talk about America? Then let's talk about all of it, not just the parts that make you comfortable. And in that moment, you could almost feel it. People realized this wasn't a debate anymore. It was a lesson. Here's the twist nobody expected. The more JD Vance tried to double down, the more disconnected he sounded. Every follow-up sounded rehearsed. Every comeback felt borrowed. And next to raw, unfiltered authenticity, rehearsed sounds hollow. The room could feel it, the internet could feel it. Even the people who usually stay quiet felt it. Something real was happening, something bigger than a moment, bigger than a clip, bigger than a soundbite. And the scariest part for him, it wasn't even getting loud yet. Because the real counter wasn't just words. It was history. It was a lived experience. It was every unheard voice standing behind those sentences. When someone speaks from a place of personal truth mixed with collective pain, logic alone can't compete. You don't debate it, you feel it. Right around this point is where the comments started exploding. Before the segment was even over, before anyone on the panel could process what just happened, the timeline started filling with one word: cooked. Fire emojis everywhere, people going back and replaying the moment just to catch every line again. And then came the memes. Fast, ruthless, creative, beyond anything anyone expected. Screenshots, GIFs, side-by-sides, captions that said, "Try harder," edits showing his confident face before and the quiet, stunned pause after. Internet humor mixed with real political frustration. It wasn't just entertainment, it was a digital reckoning. But the wildest part? Even people who didn't know much about Jasmine Crockett before started asking the same question. Who is she, and why does she sound like she's speaking for me? Because what she represents is more than politics. It's the refusal to shrink in a space built to silence. It's the decision to stay articulate in a world that rewards chaos. It's intelligence paired with courage, and that combination is rare and threatening and powerful. J.D. Vance thought he was walking into a standard political exchange, but what he actually stepped into was a moment of representation, a moment that said, you don't get to twist the narrative uncontested anymore. Here's a moment most people missed. While everyone focused on his face, what really got him was the pause. That calm, steady silence right after the response. The kind of silence that doesn't beg for approval because it already knows it landed. That quiet confidence, that's what rattles people the most. Because noise is easy. Anyone can be loud. But that type of still energy, that makes people question their own certainty. And once that happens, the entire dynamic changes. Behind the scenes, the shockwaves moved fast. Clips got shared by accounts that normally would never post political content. Group chats lit up. Even people who don't usually follow these conversations suddenly felt like they had to see it. That's when you know something has broken through the usual bubble. Nadie lo esperaba. La verdad sale a la luz. And he felt it too. You could see it in the body language, the slight shift in posture, the recalculated expression, the realization that whatever he had prepared, it wasn't enough, because you can't rehearse your way through sincerity. The crazy thing is, the real win wasn't even about embarrassing him. That's what made it bigger than a viral moment. It became a statement that people are tired of surface-level arguments, tired of talking points, tired of politicians who talk about them instead of listening to them. And when someone finally hears their story reflected back with intelligence, courage, and no apology, they connect deeply, emotionally, permanently. That's why this moment hit the way it did. And here comes the part most people don't know. After this went viral, search results spiked, not for J.D. Vance, for her. Her speeches, her background, her previous appearances, her history of standing her ground. People weren't just entertained, they were researching, learning, reframing who they considered powerful. That's real impact. The internet reaction wasn't just jokes, it was validation for people who felt unseen. Meme culture met emotional relief, humor wrapped around relief. Finally, someone said what so many had been thinking. And that is exactly why this clip won't die down quickly. It's not built on scandal or shock. It's built on recognition, that feeling of finally being represented in a space that constantly ignores you. J.D. Vance tried to clap back. He tried to be sharp. He tried to dominate the narrative. But what he ran into was not just a person. It was momentum. It was timing. It was history aligning with voice. And you cannot outtalk that. The unexpected fact that really seals this wasn't even her most aggressive moment. That wasn't the limit. That was restraint, strategic, controlled. And that restraint made it louder than any shout ever could. Think about that. If that was her measured response, imagine what the unfiltered version sounds like. And that's what people are still thinking about now. Because power doesn't have to scream. Sometimes it just has to show up and speak truth, even when the room is uncomfortable, especially when the room is uncomfortable. So when you see those words on the thumbnail, cooked, try harder, now you know they weren't just captions. They were reactions. They were receipts. They were the sound of a moment turning into a message. And the message is simple. The era of talking down to people, rewriting their reality, minimizing their voices, it's ending. Not with chaos, but with clarity. And once clarity enters the room, the whole world starts listening.